more of a half funding schedule, kind of funding the normal cost only. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. But yeah, the stabilization reserve is far more flexible, but you don't get the credit from the rating agencies for it. So again, the difference is the $50 million of your liability today, if I get to use the higher interest rate, is more like a $32, $33 million kind of number. Because just, if you think about it, using a higher interest rate means a lower liability and vice versa. So the ability, by virtue of pre-funding, they allow me to use a higher interest rate. So it's almost circular. If you can afford to spend more money, you don't have to fund as much money, because you only show a $30 million liability instead of a $50 million liability. So I'm not going to argue the relative merits of that. I'm just simply saying, from a financial statement impact, it's a lot better to show $30 million on your books than $50 million on your books. But again, you're not allowed to do that unless you show a commitment to actually fund. So, again, there is no free lunch in this world. I mean, let's be honest about it. And if there is, sign me up. But that said, that's pretty much what we've got here. I mean, there's obviously a lot of stuff in the report, but I don't want to, bore you to tears with actuarial math, but I try to give you the brief overview and the highlights.
You ready for questions from us?
Come on out.
Will, I think you had your hand up. Mr. Hackler, I'm trying that.
I want to be bored with the actuarial math.
Actuarial math, good times.
So what mortality tables are you using for this?
This one was the 2013 mortality table. I'm sorry, 2000 mortality table projected to 2017.
And is that a mandated, or?
Well, there is no mandate.
Or you're picking that one?
There is no mandate.
I don't know the health insurance.
Yeah, no, there is no mandate of what mortality table to use. We can use whatever one we honestly feel like. However, PARAC has recently moved to that mortality table, so we're standardizing that so that all the retirement systems are using that table right now across Massachusetts.
Okay. Can I keep going? Okay. Just to refresh, to help me out, I am the new guy here, so I don't know all these things. Yep. What was the year of this change that you said, that the rate, or you made some comment about a change from
pay as you go to
participation rates? No, how much the retirees were paying?
Oh, in 1990, retired teachers, this is only retired teachers, July 1st of 1990, if you were retired before July 1st of 1990, you pay 10% for your medical. If you're retired after that date, you pay 15% for your medical.
Was that a decision that was made in the
that's
school
a state
district?
thing.
That's
no,
a
school
state
district
thing.
had nothing to do with that.
Okay. Anything on the horizon with that?
Not that I'm aware of. They have a pretty good lobby, and that has been untouched for a long time.
Any other questions? Yes, the question I had, and the reason I requested the chart, particularly the one we looked at before about the general fund.
The previous chart?
Because I guess my impression or understanding of why we need to think about OPEB is that at some point in the future there was going to be this bubble. And we were going to be trucking along, and all of a sudden, wow, we were going to see a disproportionate amount of retiree costs. And we need to start planning for that now. And I kind of saw that in my head, like, all right, I just had a kid, and I'm going to plan for college. There's going to be this big expense coming up. I better start saving up so I can continue living my lifestyle when I get there to pay for college. So I was thinking that in order to continue to fund the district the way we have been, and to handle that bump in the future, we better start setting money aside. So I was pretty surprised when I saw the pay-as-you-go as the least expensive option as far as taking from our general fund every year. And the reason I focus on taking from our general fund is because every dollar we put towards this is one less dollar we put towards educating kids. And it would be worth it to me if 30 years from now we knew there's going to be this bubble, and we didn't want to stick kids 30 years from now with this problem, and have them have less money spent on education, that we'd start saving up for that so it would be equal across the years, and that we would get level funding. So I went, oof, why would we ever do this? Then I also look at, I have been here on the board when we've had a 14% increase, and it was a bad year. I think that might even be the year that we had to close schools because it was such a big increase. And rearrange how we did our grade levels. So I know that can be extremely painful to get a 14% surprise. So, I see the benefit of funding this somewhat because it helps kind of smooth that bumpy road. where you know that healthcare costs can do this over time, and if you can have something to help you smooth that out, make things a little more predictable, make funding education a little bit more smooth, and you're not changing staffing year to year, which is not good for education either. Unless, of course, you want to change staffing when your students drop,
Yep.
staffing drop, but not because you're forced to financially. Yeah.
So, go ahead and finish.
Okay. So I guess from my perspective, and again, I'm obviously not an actuarial person or a accountant, but is it fair to say our plan is to continue to look at this chart every so often to make sure that the best bet for us for the long term is that lower, and maybe I'm wrong in assuming the best bet's that lower thing, but when I see that the least amount to pay for the next 40 years is the bottom line, or the next 30 years, or whatever's up there, that is attractive to me, because that takes care of our obligations, and it takes care of our kids.
It does. I can actually pull back the other chart, and I can show you one key reason why that number is that way. Sorry to keep making you go between charts.
What I was going to say is, this may be a bit of an ask, but would it be possible to maybe have Nancy maybe look at some of our past budgets, et cetera, and possible costs, and maybe come up with a couple different options for us to look at when dealing with this fund?
Do you understand the question?
I think he's thinking that we're going to look at the budget and budget some amount of money and look at where we might have been able to do this in the past and where we possibly could do it in the future. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I wonder, I mean, I'd be interested in to know over the last however many years we have the data, what we do spend on this and how much variation we see, how much of it is a smooth up and how much of it is bumpy, and how much having some money to help smooth that out would help. I don't know if that satisfies, okay. I don't know if that satisfies the rating agencies.
Yeah, and
But our goal, in my mind, isn't that long term, but recognize the liability, but more to make it more financially stable in the district with the unpredictable health care. More, what's unpredictable seems to be more the cost of health care per person than the number of people participating.
Sure, but one thing I would say is, the prior example you said, well, gee, the pay-as-you-go cost is less than all the alternatives. All true. However, at the end of 30 years, this bottom green line, which is the x-axis, is also the amount of assets you have set aside under the pay-as-you-go model. Under the other models, you have $90 million set aside to cover said benefits. So that's the key element, is that $90 million then is paying for these benefits thereafter. You no longer need to put in the $2 million a year, or in that case, $8 million a year, because at that point, I mean, the basic point of this is, if you went back like a pension plan, had this statement always existed and you went back in time 50 years, and you guys had decided to start funding 50 years from now, there would be a $50 million pot of money sitting here to pay these benefits. And so when the $2 million bill came this year, you would simply submit it to the trust, they would pay it, problem solved. The issue here is there is no trust to send it to. You send it and it's like a Social Security trust fund. We got you, it's an IOU. In this case, we'd say there's $90 million set aside to pay said benefits. So that's really the argument here, is we accumulate this over 30 years to get to the point of where thereafter we don't need to use the money anymore.
Well, does it end up being, this asset end up being like an endowment where you never touch the principal and you're always paying with the interest, or do you continue to have to fund all along anyway?
No, after the 30 years, at that point your liabilities and your assets are equal. They're going to stay basically in that same corridor, plus or minus, $1 million.
Because if you start drawing off of it,
Yeah, but you're also, the money you're earning on $90 million,
Okay,
you're earning
that's
you're earning $6 million a year, which is basically what you're paying out. So that's why I say at that point,
it kind of ends up being like an endowment.
similar concept,
Where the
yes.
principal stays the same and you're using the interest and the earnings to pay.
Similar concept, yes.